Now, may I request Mr. Manish, please come and share his point of view. Mr. Manish.
Thank you so much, Kuldeep ji. Thank you for the opportunity and the introduction. A very warm welcome to everyone. I would actually like to start by sharing a few lines that caught my attention recently. Can I have the next slide? It said, eat your food like a medicine today, or else you will end up eating medicines as your food tomorrow. I mean, very powerful, very meaningful, especially in today's context. Eat the right food. That's what it means. Like you eat the right medicine if required. Eat your food on time. You don't miss your medicines. You always take them on time. And eat the right portion size. You have your medicines in the dosage that your doctor prescribes. Now, if you don't follow that, if you fail to follow that, it typically leads to, can I go back, please? It typically leads to the lifestyle diseases the way we know it, and therefore we end up surviving on medicines. I think such an apt saying, and with COVID-19 around us, I think there can be no other time better than this, where this is more relevant. With this pandemic, the importance of nutrition and health, one of the pillars that Kuldeep spoke about, I think has increased multifolds in the minds of the consumers. Now, people are reading up on immunity. People are reading up on health and nutrition, on food. You can see the discussions on various social media platforms that you may be a part of. Consumers, therefore, are becoming more educated. And I think it's a very, very positive signs that will help both consumers making the right choice and manufacturers to be able to come up with products that actually make sense to the consumers and what they're looking at. I think the good thing coming out of this pandemic, at least one bright spot I see, is that the connect between the food and health will be even more stronger as we go forward in the future. Next slide. Now, as Kuldeep ji said, health and nutrition, convenience, indulgence, which is important. What do we play up? I think nutrition and health cannot exist in isolation. It needs to be married with one or both of the other two elements that I mentioned here. Example, if you club nutrition and health with indulgence, one example that comes to my mind is, let's say, a Greek yogurt, something which is high in protein and full of fruits, etc., thick and indulgent. If you marry health and nutrition with convenience, I think one great example that comes to my mind is, let's say, probiotic curd. And then if you marry all the three together, which probably is the sweetest part that you can get, an example could typically be, let's say, a chocolate milkshake, which is convenient from a mother's perspective because she can then feed milk into the kid. It's indulgent for the child because he's having something which is thick, chocolatey, something that he loves, and it's healthy because it's dairy for one, and two, it could be fortified as well. So I think when it comes to food, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that taste is a non-negotiable. A healthy eating cannot be at the cost of taste. Consumers will reject products that are healthy but are not tasty. I mean, personally, a lot of work that I've done in the past on food products for diabetics, one of the consistent expectations was that their food needs to be same as that for a healthy individual. Otherwise, they feel alienated and they don't want to have that experience. That's why a lot of these sugar-free products have not really done well because their taste profile is so very different from a regular tasting product. So while you see them on the shelf, I think there's lots that can be done around to make it more applicable and to the consumers. The next slide. I think talking about taste, we have to understand that taste is local, especially for traditional products like buttermilk or paneer, let's say in dairy categories. Every region has a specific taste and we need to design for that. I think one great line that I again heard was the best way to experience a culture is through food. I think it talks a lot as to how food has a very strong emotional connect, social connect, and also a cultural connect. For example, the whole experience of gajar ka halwa, the best thing which comes to your mind is, meri maa ke haath ka gajar ka halwa. Now, when it comes to lassi, for example, Punjab is famous for lassi. I mean, that's the first place where your mind typically tends to go to. But then if you go to a place like Varanasi, where I come from, you need to have a Pehlwan ki lassi. I mean, that's the most famous lassi joint, which is a very big touristy place as well, which is called Pehlwan ki lassi because it has its own twist. You know, he adds rabdi to it, he adds malai to it, it's had loads of almonds. Therefore, you could either, you know, drink it or eat it as a dessert. Now that becomes an experience in itself. And I think we as food product designers, if we can create that connect, that experience for our consumers, I think that for us will be the holy grail. I'd like to share a couple of examples in this space here. So with the recent launch of our Dreamery brands of dairy products, when we were trying to understand the whole curd space, and curd is something which is very common, one big question we want to understand was why is it that people are not making curd at home? Because it's not too difficult, right? But then the feedback was that from the homemakers were typically that, you know, it's very difficult to make a product which is similar to what my mother used to make. You know, it doesn't set properly, it's not as thick, it's not as consistent every time I make it. So it's better that, you know, I just go downstairs and pick up a pack. Then when we were doing the whole development and we went to the consumers with the product that we had, I think one consistent feedback that we heard with the consumers that tasted it was, you know, this is same as my mother used to make it. I think that's a very powerful feedback that you could hear as an NPD person. And I think we've actually used that insight into our communication for the product as well. And they said it's just like my mother used to make it because it's thick, it's creamy, it sets well, there's no release of water, etc., etc. All of those experiences come to your mind when you were having your mom's curd when you were part of, you know, growing up. Similarly, when we're doing, let's say, the chocolate milkshake, for example, I think one of the consistent feedbacks we heard was, you know, the taste just reminds you of molten chocolate ice cream that you have. And I'm sure, you know, all of us have had that experience of having a chocolate ice cream, which then starts to melt. And at the end, you know, you have that liquidy portion, which has its own taste profile, right? But then that's an experience that we all have had. And therefore, a product which reminds you of that experience definitely sits very, very well with the consumer psyche. That brings to my next slide, which is, you know, where do I see the future? And that's more from my perspective. I think we've all been seeing a trend where physical wellness has become very, very important for the consumer. You see a lot of online businesses coming up to ensure that even in times like this, you know, you don't miss out on your exercise. But I think things will move from exercise to a holistic well-being. It's no longer physical, it needs to be physical and mental wellness together. Now, Deepak touched upon, you know, how happiness hormones. I think food will play more important role in the space of holistic well-being going forward. The good thing is this whole pandemic has forced people to start reading up on food, how it helps them, what are the benefits, more deeper than what they had ever done in the past, which I think will help all of us as we go forward. I think the one thing as brands that we need to be clear and we need to be prepared for is the fact that we need to act as partners to our consumers as we go forward. Brands which can do that successfully will be successful. Now, what do I mean by partners? I mean, give people the choice that they're looking for. Give people the information that they want at the time that they want and in the format that they want. Be seen as an expert who can guide a consumer through the whole journey and be ready for giving them advice as and when required, rather than just be a food product provider. I think while the products for mass consumption will continue to stay, I think the bespoke solutions that aim to fit the disparate needs of individual consumers, I think that will see acceleration. Deepak touched upon the whole DNA. I think that's one space where I see, you know, at-home DNA testing kits, maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, becoming mainstream for personalized wellness, where you yourself could do those tests and figure out, not just from a diet perspective, but even things like skin and hair solutions. What is it that you would need for your specific intervention? What's going to be of most beneficial use for you as an individual? I think in this space, we're all trying to get back to our roots, something that we are all aware of historically. I think, let's say, an example of almond kesar flavored milk. I mean, you don't need to tell a consumer that almond kesar is a healthy option. We all know that. We have kind of grown up on that knowledge. But I think in the times in the future, in the times to come, we need to take that a notch up higher. We need to look at products which can actually be preventative. That's a very strong statement to make, but I think that's possible. I think Ayurveda is one such direction where we can make stronger claims, where we can ensure that the products do deliver on the promise. And I think Ayurveda is a tested science in itself, and people can relate to it. However, how we navigate the whole space of Indian food regulations, I think that's the black box here. That's something that we'll have to navigate as we go forward. And I think the last thing I would want to say is that food will move beyond nutrition. Now, what I mean by that, I mean, food is supposed to keep you healthy, keep you whatever, but I think just not a normal healthy state, but then it will move to spaces where it's not gone to, but will have to. Example, Southeast Asia, you see a lot of products which talk about skincare, which has collagen. Now, could dairy not be the carrier which can help you do that? So I think some of those marriages will need to start to happen as we go forward to make the food industry be more relevant to the consumers. But I think having said that, I would want to end by probably making putting up a provocation on the table. We are talking about disrupting the markets. We are talking about innovations and how we need to think very, very different. I think one of the things that we need to start thinking about is to deliver on that promise, to deliver on that intent. Are we getting diverse skill sets in our teams, in our R&D teams as well? I think typically you still see a lot of that traditional hiring mentality where it was trying to hire more of the same. But I think if we really need to break the barrier, I think we will have to look at bringing in diverse skill sets, diverse thought processes, diverse experiences into your teams, which can ensure that you have the right innovation mindset and the ecosystem. I mean, for an example, one of my team members in NPD comes from a personal care background. I mean, no prior experience in dairy, so to say. But I think the advantages that I see of that are immense, and that's something which I would want to leave on the table. I think probably this is a idea for maybe another webinar, Kuldeep, because it's a wide, diverse topic. But then I think that's something that we as the leaders in the industry need to start focusing on and talking about and working towards that. So that's my last statement. Back to you, Kuldeep.
Thank you. Thank you, Manishi. It was a wonderful presentation and brought to the table, after a long time, I understand the meaning of real localization from where it is coming, because taste is local. So that way, even if a MNC is entering into any market, they cannot compromise with the local taste, local culture. That is the first non-negotiable. The second most important point, particularly in the diversification of the R&D team. And I think that skill set is also one of the concerns which I raised right in the beginning. Very nice, Manishi, listening to you.